My name's Amy Davies. I'm the Executive Director of Provincetown Community Television.
Yay!
Hey, Community Media! We have here from Cape Media News, so community media is well represented, and I know that I saw John Braden this morning too from WOMR. So we have a very strong community media and community radio representation here today, so we're happy about that. We are going to talk about overcoming creative blocks this morning. And one of our panelists will be arriving soon, but we have Ann Stott and Laura Shabbat here with us. And we'll talk about, we'll do the bio thing, and then we'll get into our discussion. But first, we're going to ask you to do a group activity. Don't throw anything. So if everyone could, as all group activities start, close your eyes. So if everyone could close your eyes and go back to a time. Wait. I'm teasing you.
We didn't talk about this.
We didn't talk about
We
we
did.
did. Well, we know where it's going to end up.
Oh,
so
okay.
everyone, close your eyes and go back to a time when you were young. So maybe you're like 10, maybe you're 12, and you're doing something creative, and you're immersed in your creativity, and you're enjoying yourself. Can everybody get back to a time like that where there was just pure joy in the activity that you're doing? Maybe it's a moment you discovered. I have a very strong memory of when I discovered that I enjoyed making art. It's one of my favorite childhood memories. So if you can go back to that place, just take a look. Okay, so if everyone can open their eyes, we're going to ask you to do something radical. We're going to ask you not to silence your cell phones, but to shut them off. And we invite you to join us in actually powering down your cell phone and having an immersive experience with us during our workshop. And we'll have a photo op at the end so that you can fulfill your hashtag moment. But if everyone could do that, so that you don't, it buzzes, you run to the restroom and check it. So we're just going to ask that you come on a journey with us for our short workshop. So thank you for that. All right, so I started working in Provincetown about 5 years ago, and at that time, I knew no one on the panel. And since that time, I have to say my life has been enriched by meeting the three panelists, and Marion hopefully will join us soon, but by in a lot of the themes in the keynote, generosity of time and of experience and of emotional connection. And these are, when I was putting this panel together, I was thinking of people who would give a lot in a talk, would give of themselves. And these are people that every time I have a conversation, I learn something about myself, something about the world. I might walk away and go, oh, I never thought about that before. So I hope that you have that same experience today. And I thank you for coming like everyone says, all the way from Provincetown. There are a lot of Provincetown people in the room. So we're happy to be here, and a lot of Provincetown people participating today. So Laura, hello, this is Laura Shabbat, and she returned to painting and drawing through the, I'm going to say it wrong, Romanos Risk Scholarship at the Museum School of Provincetown Art Association and Museum, and a Cape Resident Scholarship from the Fine Arts Work Center, and a gift from Berta Walker Gallery, or Berta Walker, to study with artist Robert Henry. She's a follower of Hans Hofmann's tenets, and she teaches figure drawing and figure painting at the Cape Cod Museum of Art and at Provincetown Art Association and Museum. And she is a graduate of the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, which is now Tufts, in a multidisciplinary studies. So, thank you. And Ann Stott is an indie rock singer-songwriter. She's our resident rock star for the day. Yeah. And she's released 3 albums and played hundreds of gigs in New York and Boston and all along the East Coast. She busked for 5 summers in Provincetown, playing 50 to 60 2-hour sets to thousands of tourists from all over the world. That's no easy feat. It's not even easy to walk down the street, never mind playing. She's an actor, and she can be seen currently. Marion! I'm sorry. So this is Marion. And I got to know Anne mostly through working on a documentary that she made at PTV called Never Washed, Scream Along with Billy. And she was also recently a presenter at the first annual TEDx event in Provincetown. And you can find that TEDx talk on YouTube. All right, and Marion, hi.
Hi.
So we've all already shut off our phones. So we're ready for you.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, I thought I'd give you a heads up because we don't want, we don't want yours.
Yeah, right.
Terrible.
Okay, done.
So Marion moved to Provincetown in 1982 to fulfill a dream of living and making art in a community of creative people. And she's never thought of leaving. She's well known in the world of photography for her innovative camera obscura work. And Marion has been awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship, a Pollock Krasner Fellowship, and a fellowship from the Massachusetts Cultural Council. She's been awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award for Artistic Excellence by the Provincetown Art Association and Museum. And earlier this year, she installed a walk-in camera obscura during an exhibition of her work at Griffin Museum of Photography. And most recently, she had her first retrospective of her work at PAM, the Provincetown Art Association and Museum, called On Bended Light.
Hi.
So that's who we have here, and we're going to start out by having each panelist talk about how they overcome something that might, or how they have overcome something that may have, jammed them up a little bit. So, Anne.
Okay.
Take it away.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks so much for having me here today. And, I'm really grateful to be here because I feel like it has taken me so much, it's taken so much work for me to embrace my creative life and embrace, that I am a writer, I am a performer. And so if I can share any of that process and then help anyone else embrace that more in their own life, I feel really grateful and privileged to be able to do that. But I did realize that after Amy asked me to be on this panel, I realized that I never use the word block in my life. So I have used the word block more discussing being on this panel than I have literally used it in my entire adult life. And which is funny because I did, I loved music and acting all through my childhood, and then for a lot of reasons that we don't have time to get into, I dropped all of it at age 18. And I spent my 20s sort of, trying to find a marginally respectable way to make a living and live. But always frustrated, always knowing something was missing, and it wasn't until I was like 29 that I started singing and writing songs again. And I mean, I have dozens of journals that I have burned filled with, I'm not good enough, what do I think I'm doing, who do I think I am, I should just get a job, I don't deserve to do this, I have nothing to say. I mean, I had to really struggle through a lot of internal messaging telling me that I didn't deserve to do what I wanted to do, And I was thinking as I came down here, I took a workshop a few years ago with Sloan Wainwright, who's a folk singer and songwriter, and she said in that workshop, she said, because we are called, that is enough, which was very moving to me. But even through all of that internal struggle to kind of find my voice and own what I had to say and own my desire to say it, I never thought to myself, oh, I'm blocked. Like that wasn't how I thought of it, and I never made a conscious decision not to use that word, but I do think there's something important to be said about like the creative process is capricious, and it is scary, and it is confusing and overwhelming, and I don't know if the word block helps any of that. And this idea that we sit with nothing, right? Like, so I'm a songwriter. Like, I sit with my guitar and there's silence. and I choose to make sound, or a painter sits in front of a white canvas and has to make that first mark, or I sit at the notebook and I choose to start writing words, right? Like that moment is terrifying, and my research has proved that it's terrifying for every artist of every medium all the time, regardless of how successful they are. You know, I mean, what I said, we met yesterday to talk about what we were going to do here, and you know, Aaron Sorkin created The West Wing, arguably one of the best television shows ever made, has won countless awards, and I read, you know, that he sits down at the computer every day and looks at the blank screen and the blinking cursor and thinks, today's the day everybody's going to find out I'm a fraud. So that thing is just scary. It just is. And the more I embrace the process of like, okay, I'm scared now and I don't know what the hell I'm going to do and I have no idea if it's going to be any good. And I have no idea if I'm going to like it. But I need to do it, so I'm going to do it. Regardless of what comes, if I can just embrace that process like that, then the blocks or the obstacles or the challenges become less scary. They become less powerful, I think is the right word.
I'm sorry, I didn't know how to turn the phone off.
That's fair.
That's the corporate machine. They don't want you to know how to turn the phone off. You don't have to go away. Don't go away.
I'll be right back.
Are you keeping track of my time? Because you know I can just talk.
We have a timekeeper.
Well,
We have time.
I don't know how much time you have. I know how much time you all have.
I didn't.
Honor it.
How about when the next person's ready, they just take the mic? Let's do it. Let's do it like game show style, like reality show style. No.
You can arm wrestle with the mic.
Please. Yeah, and I think, my experience when I talk to people who are creating and they're having a hard time creating, it's not that they don't have an idea, and it's not that they don't have a desire, it's what they're telling themselves about the idea that's getting in their way. Like, oh, I have this idea, but it's stupid, or oh, I have this idea, but somebody else did it before, oh, I have this idea, but nobody's going to understand it, oh, I want to do this thing. It's like, none of the ideas about the idea matter. You have the idea, you know? And I think so many blocks are created not because we don't have ideas. I've actually come to believe that ideas are kind of available all the time to all of us. It's do we have the courage to actually take the first step into the idea? Then do we have the stamina to show up for wherever the idea takes us, which could be, you know, 1,000 different directions that we didn't plan or aren't the way we think the idea should look, but the idea morphed into something else once we stepped into it, right? So the courage and the stamina are really just as important as the idea. And I think so many blocks come from what we tell ourselves about what we want to do, not our fundamental desire to do it. So,
Great. Yeah, I'm going to say that's a great place to end.
yeah.
All right, Laura.
Just so you know, we're gonna,
Do you want this? This one seems a little more robust.
I don't need a robust.
She's thinking
Oh,
less.
In fact, I don't even really, I don't need it.
Well, we're actually doing it to
Okay.
help the camera.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'm Laura Shabbat, as you know, and when I was asked to be on the panel a year ago, I was going to do something fluffy. And instead, I'm going to tell you the real story. And I came, I wanted to paint since I was a little girl, and lots of things happened to me to not paint. And what I want to come to is what happened when I started to paint again, and that was in '92, 23 years ago, when I came here to Provincetown. And I came in a painter, and I'm like, oh my God, I've arrived again, here I am. Then I went to art school, the Museum School of Fine Arts, which it all turned out. So when I tell you this, please don't get upset. But anyway, I walked in, and they said, well, you know how to paint. You should take something else because it's a very multidisciplined school. So I studied film, but I found out that, and I made a film, and I found out I can't say no. That is not good for film, okay? You have to be able to say no to people. You have to be able to be the heavy. So I went, okay, that's not working. And I ended up acting. And the acting translated very well to a life in Provincetown. So concurrently, I went to the museum school, and then I discovered Provincetown. Shook up my whole life to find Provincetown, and anyone who becomes addicted to the town as you can knows that you change everything to stay. So I ended up I did some business stuff, but what really happened is I became a karaoke bartender and at the Governor Bradford, and that is a lifestyle, all right? I know. And I lived on Commercial Street. This is how it really went for me. So, okay, you have to keep it up, and you're in at 9 p.m., right? 9. And then you're there and you have to be on, and then you're navigating people who've been drinking a long time. And they're excited and they're wild, and they leave at 1 and you've carded them and they hate you, and then you have a drink because it's 1 in the morning. And then you have another. And then you go home and you sit there because you're wild with energy. And then at 7 a.m. in the morning, the delivery trucks come down the street. So in those years, I lived kind of a vampirish life, and what fit into that was acting. So I started acting, and that was really exciting for me. But the what really was running my artist life, which I only started to talk about, is the $100,000 student loan that I have today. How could I have a $100,000 student loan? Okay, so...
For the museum school?
Yeah, it is. So, God, when you can still have a legal student loan and defer it for 10 years. And I knew business, so I said, I can defer this for 10 years, what the hell? But I'm a karaoke bartender, waitress, okay? So I couldn't pay it off. So I said, okay, well, all right, I'll defer it another year. Well, the magic of compounding is you defer a student loan for 20 years, and it's now out of control. So I said, okay, if I act, right, I'll act, then I'll do commercials, and I'm still young enough, I'm in my 30s, and then I'll go to commercial, and then I'll make it, and I'll pay off the student loan. Well, we know how that goes. I was in community theater, and it's not to say I don't love theater. I love theater, but that wasn't no one from Law and Order was gonna come here and hire me out for the next movie. So I went, okay, God, that's not working. Student loans mounting. So I go, okay, I'll write, because I know how to write, so I'll write. So I end up writing a blog, and then I end up writing for the Banner, which, never mind how much you get paid. But anyway, so then I said, okay, now I'm writing, and if I write that novel, then, okay, I can pay off the student loan. And so in the meantime, this thing is mounting, and when it got to 100,000, I went, wow, I'm really in trouble. And then Obama started the income-based repayment student loan program, and my life became new. Because that loan lives where it's supposed to, me and all the millennials, because I pay what I can to have that loan, right? Changed my life. And so then I said, okay, it's over. This block, and boy, that is one creative block, that loan. I said, it's over. This hell is done. What do you really want to do? And I had been walking by the Fine Arts Work Center on my way to go to that karaoke job or to go to the front desk of the boat slip, and I wanted in so bad, and I wanted in. And so I was writing, and I did an interview with Michael Roberts. I figured, okay, well, maybe I can get into the Fine Arts Work Center by writing about them. So I did an interview with Michael Roberts about how do people become fellows at the Fine Arts Work Center. How does that happen? What kind of mindset do you need to be that kind of artist? And he was brilliant, and he said, you have to turn the dial. You have to say to yourself first thing every morning, what can I do today to be an artist? Not that I don't have 3 children. I don't have to get rid of my 3 children. I don't have to get rid of my student loan. I don't have to leave my husband or wife. I just have to wake up every morning. He said, you have to wake up every morning, and the first thing on your mind is, what am I going to do for my art today? And this was in 2014, which is 13, and I did that. And I got up every morning and I said, what am I going to do about my art today? And I lived by that. And since that time, obviously things have changed. If I could be painting full time, and I have a gallery now. So all that energy that was used to say no became a yes. And if I could leave you with anything today, all that energy that you used to say, no, I can't do it. No, I won't make it. Nobody's going to like my work. You shift that over to a yes, and anything can happen for you. So I'm very grateful to Michael Roberts, because when I left his office, and I had a deadline and I had to write an article, but I left a different person. And then I asked my community for permission. I said, look, you guys, I know I've done every job in Provincetown. You've seen me in theater. I've done writing, but really, 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 I want to paint. I want to paint so bad, I'm going to break. And so people gave me scholarships. So the museum gave me a scholarship, and the Fine Arts Work Center gave me a scholarship. So in our talk this morning about generosity, that lovely woman, Elisa, I give back whenever I can, however I can, because of the generosity that's been bestowed to me. So in finishing up, what I want to say is, all that no you say to yourself, if you can transfer it to a yes, miracles happen. And the other is what Michael Roberts told me is probably the best thing anyone ever told me about being an artist, which is, you can have a life. You don't have to leave your family and your husband to make art. But you have to think about it every morning and decide what you're going to do today to further your practice.
Whoa, I never heard that story.
No, I haven't. I'm coming out.
I've known Laura in every, I moved to Provincetown in '82, and I've known you through every incarnation.
Yeah.
But I never heard the story.
Well, in doing this panel, I said, am I really going to fess up? I decided, am I going to really fess up? And everyone in this room has a problem like I have. We all have problems, big problems. Nobody gets away with a simple life. Anyway, Marion is my inspiration, so here you go.
It's really interesting because we all have in fact the same answer, and probably every creative person on this planet would have the same answer to the question of how do we move through the things that stop us. And for me, I used to dream about being a painter. I had a dream all my childhood of standing by a river, and I had a canvas, and I was painting, and of course the river is so symbolic, and I'm painting this landscape. But I grew up in a political family. My mother wanted me to fulfill her unfulfilled dreams. My teachers told me I couldn't draw, can't. So I became my other person, which was I ended up teaching political science, getting a PhD when I was really young, and teaching political science at Syracuse University. And I lived in a commune, and we put out a newspaper, and I started doing photography for the paper. I always did photography. I had a little Brownie camera and all my little baby pictures, so I know that was like some little thing that passed through. But I had the privilege of being fired for, that was a gift, because I did not know how to get out of the prison of academia. It was a really easy life. I got paid really nicely. I mean, in comparison to what there people make in the world, it wasn't very much money, but for me it was plenty of money, and I didn't have to work very hard, and but it was a kind of death for me, because academia, it's funny to say this in a community college. You know, it's academia is its own IBM. For me, Syracuse University was like working at IBM. I might as well have been at IBM. And when I got fired, of course, for my feminist activity, challenging every value that there was there, which I just, truth be told, did not know how to be any other person than who I was. And it didn't fit. And so when I got fired, I tried to get hired, but no one wanted to hire me. I was too far gone. And so,
What year was that? What year was that?
I started teaching in 1968, Syracuse University. I was the only female person at age 24 of all the social sciences. My faculty of political science was 50 men. And in fact, there were no women that taught sociology, psychology, history, economics, philosophy. I was it, 24 years old, at a major university. If you can believe that, that's sexism. The raw, unadulterated sexism. And I was fired in 1972. And I left in 73. They give you a year to look for a job.
Why were you fired?
Why? It's such a long story, but if you want to know, it's the kind of history of feminism. I was I don't even know where to begin unraveling this. I was young. And there was, in 1971, was the pinnacle of the women's movement. And everyone was saying that women weren't paid as much as men. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe that in my department of all these lovely men that I would in fact be the lowest paid person. And I asked, I know I know this couldn't be, but could you just show me? And people in my department accused me of being a Nazi, and like the worst kind of slander came at me for just asking that question. Eventually, I got a list, and in fact, I was paid less than people that didn't even have a PhD. I was the lowest paid person of everybody, even though I'd already been there for like 3 years, you know. My office was the broom closet. Everybody else started going from the basement where I started to the first floor, to the second floor, to the windows. You know, that's how it works. You know, corner window, blah, blah, blah. And I went from the basement to the broom closet, which had been the office of the previous woman who was hired during World War II. Okay?
And
That was the official woman office.
so this jump started you wanting to live a
Yeah, let's
creative
get
life.
off the university. Okay, so, but anyway, I was fired for things like that, shaking up the thing. And so, what happened to me, the thing that I wanted to talk to you about, thank you for getting me back on the track, was that I had no education as an artist, and I felt in my heart always that I was this person. And I moved to Provincetown to become that person, to be an artist. Nobody knew that I was the leader of the women's movement. Nobody knew that I was a cause celeb, blah, 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 blah. I cut my hair, and I just got a job. I just started doing photography, and I did photography, I hung my pictures here, and that's the beauty of the place. A restaurant wants your work, and then all of a sudden you know, so I built this thing. But what happened to me was that I had to start to see myself as an artist, and that is a struggle that we have, that I have, and I'm sure everybody in this room, that I'm sure we all have it. I didn't go to school in art, so nobody said when you graduated you're an artist. There were no artists in my family. Artist was like from another planet. And somebody told me, Judy Pfaff, she was an amazing artist, and I took some class with her, and she said, Marion, you're not a photographer, you're an artist. And I almost started crying because that's what I thought I was when I was 4 and 5. And that was in 1990. And it started me on this path. The thing is that when I finally got a Guggenheim, I thought, now you're an artist, right? It's all external. It's externalized. You're an artist. You're in art school. You're an artist. You're the Guggenheim. You're an artist. You know, I had to accept that's what I am. And sometimes when I'm in my studio and I'm painting, I'm thinking, you're an artist. You know, it's like, wow, you're an artist. Because if you can just merge your life with that life, for me, then all those other things, which is the very important things that Anna's been talking about, the other people, the other thing that floats around in space and judges, and the minute you open up your brain to it, it's like, it doesn't look right, it isn't finished, blah, 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 blah. These are all like external blocks or whatever, mountains. They are external mountains that the soul kind of has to find a way, a path through it to your own self till you're genuinely in the now. And if you can get into the now, that's where you make your work. And, you know, everything else is just, it's like meditation. It's so joyful for me in those moments when every voice shuts up, including the who am I and am I an artist, every voice shuts up and I just flow in it. And I live for those moments. They're absolute, pure, unadulterated joy. They're like love. They're just beautiful. And I think for all of us, if we can find those, whatever you want to call it, you know, making art is it's just a path of the self for me. It's just not, it's all about me. It's very selfish. It's completely self-oriented, but not in a bad way, in a good way, you know. I'm obsessed with myself. In that, you know what I mean? I don't mean it in a bad way, but I mean, you know, that's all I think about, you know. I show pictures of
We
my
talked a little bit about yesterday that discovering who you are and being a little obsessed with yourself, how that leads to more genuine work and that people actually respond. And Laura, I think maybe you could talk about that, about your painting and why didn't we pan it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was just lulled by Marion, her talking. She's lovely. Both, I'm surrounded by women who talk beautifully, so.
And you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, you missed the Love Fest.
Marion said something, both Ann and Marion said something yesterday that was fabulous. And one was, Marion said, the person that does the work and the person that assesses the work are the two different people within you. So you're making the work, making the work, making the work, and then a couple of days later you look at the work. Those are two separate parts of yourselves. And that's very empowering to hear, isn't it? You know, it allows you to have that joy that Marion is talking about, and knowing that later you'll assess where your work fits. And Ann said yesterday that work is work you're researching something. For example, a writer friend of hers was stuck, and the writer decided to research something esoteric. What was it, dear?
It wasn't a friend, it was in Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. She talks about how, every aspect of the work is the work. So she didn't have it for editing chapter 4, and she didn't have it for starting chapter 7, but she had to go research what the wire top of a champagne bottle is called. And she spent, and this was maybe before the internet, so she spent like an hour and a half finding out what that thing is called. And that was her work for the day, and that was the work. She showed up for her work, and I'll hand it back to you in a second, but we were talking a lot about this yesterday. I think so many blocks come from our desired results from our work, right? And part of what happens as I keep working is that, I have desired results all the time, but my relationship to them when I am writing and when I am making music is different than it used to be. And especially because I didn't create for a while and I came back to creating, I was sort of desperate to prove I was a songwriter. I wanted to finish songs. I wrote these songs. See, I'm a songwriter, and I'm proud of those songs I wrote, but once I had proved that to myself, really, was ultimately the person that I had to, convince, I could take some space and I could shift how I wrote the songs and how I thought about writing the songs and how I came to the songs. And then the songwriting shifted because I was giving myself more space and I was embracing the process of writing the songs and not just desperate for the result. And, the work is the work, and I think a lot of people, fall away from creating because ultimately they don't have that experience you were just talking about of love. Like, do I love, just sitting at the guitar and, messing around until I hear something that triggers something that makes me feel like, oh, wait, that could live outside of me, that could be a song. And I do love that. I can just do that over and 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 over again. And when we get into but I want to finish a song and I want it to sound like this and I thought it was going to be that, and no, that starts shutting down the place from which we find something new. When we put our own intellectual ideas on what we're supposed to be making, and then killing or suppressing the place from which the ideas come. And wait, there was somewhere else I was going to go with that, but now I've blanked out, so maybe I should hand it back to you.
So, jump starting, what helps me paint more than anything else, besides finally giving my own self a break, is, and this is true for all of you, is finding that thing that unlocks the joy that Marion's talking about. And for me, that's the life drawing at the museum at PAM. And twice a week, on a good week, once a week, most of the time, I go in there with a newsprint pad and charcoal, and it's really, it's newsprint and charcoal, okay? And 10 1-minute poses and a long pose, and it doesn't have to be anything precious. Most of it will get thrown away, but that's where the work starts, because in there, it's I don't have to leave with anything. I just have to be in this room. And when I'm in that room, in that place, with a model in front of me, that's how I can unlock myself. So that's what works for me. Marion, you?
Well, I was just going to say, you got me back. So I think another thing that's hard is that we create and then it's bad, right? And then we're like, oh my God, it's bad, I'm bad. It's I make a lot of bad work that I throw away. And I now embrace that, as long as I wrote for the day, I wrote, and I know that I'm going to reject 90% of what I create. So,
just to that, I never throw anything away.
Well, I don't actually throw it away. I just know that it's not something I'm going to share with the world.
Because I'm always blown away by the things that I made, like in the moment. And then I start the mental thing, and so, you know, or I ruin them. But I took a picture of it before I ruined it, before the brain went at it. And I am always amazed by that person inside of me that made that, and what the hell are you doing screwing around with everything? Just do it. And when you take a picture of it, leave it alone. I mean, now I'm trying to tell myself that right in this moment. And the thing I wanted to say about what you were saying about when I try to look at it like the glass. Like sometimes I'll do a bunch of work and then there's nothing. And I say to myself, okay, Marion, now the glass gets full. And I allow myself to read a magazine. I work really hard, believe it or not, on allowing myself to do nothing. Because I know from history, from my history, that I will reach a time when all of a sudden, bam, it's on, and then I'm crazy and I can't stop. So I don't work like every day, doing the thing every day. It takes me a while to get to that place. But once it hits me, I work really fast and really hard, and I can do a body of work. And I'm always changing because I wait till I'm full, and then it's full, and now I've done it, and now enough. Do something different. So that's what happened to me with the camera obscura. I felt like I knew how the camera was going to take everything. I knew, even though it was all about the mystery of having a can and pulling away a piece of tape and not knowing what it's seeing, I started to know what those cans were going to see, and the mystery was over. And so I said, I'll never take another picture again. Of course, that wasn't true. But and then I started to paint, which is a whole other thing. But yeah, it's like you got to give yourself a break. You know, it's like give yourself a break. And I'm 74 years old. I'm just learning. Give yourself a break. You know, and I think about like my whole life. You know, all these voices and all this everything. Like, one of the privileges of getting older is that you just get to say,
Another really practical thing is to find a teacher that works for you and work with that teacher. Robert Henry is that teacher for me. And, you know, I have a lot of background in just, you know, I am that person that went to school and, you know, understands the history of art. The last 100 years of art is in my brain. But it took a teacher to also help unlock it. So, you know, there was the permission, I gave myself permission, the student one got handled, but then there was a teacher to guide me. And so it is useful to find a teacher that works for you, if you need that.
Do you think you could interchange mentor with the word teacher?
Yes,
Same
absolutely.
thing. Did you have something else you wanted to say, Anne? You look like you had.
Well, I think like try everything, right? Like try everything, like what Laura said about turning all the no energy into a yes. Like take a class, and then if you don't like that teacher, reject everything they told you and take a different class with someone else. You know, I think there's so much fear. There's so much fear, and you know, I have you know, songwriting has traditionally not been something that was formally taught, and it's only in the last maybe 5 to 10 years that schools like Berkeley have started adding songwriting programs. And so, I mean, I found my songwriting voice by listening to, you know, musicians and songwriters that I love and respect, but largely by myself. And so, and I'm very sort of protective, and I'm a Scorpio, so I'm a little secretive about my actual creative process. But now I sort of feel like try everything. Like nobody can take away from me who I am. Like no teacher is gonna like fundamentally like, you know, alter me in such a way that I can't find more of my voice, you know? And I think I was a little mistrusting of teachers and now looking back on the last 20 years, I would say like, try it. Why not? Like do it, you know, like keep doing the yes, keep doing the yes.
So we should probably open it up to questions, and maybe you can repeat the questions in case people can't hear out there. So does anybody have a question?
Marion, you said, I wrote down this quote because I thought it was so interesting, the privilege of getting fired. I thought that was really interesting. Can you expound on that a little bit? I'm very curious how you thought about that.
I think that sometimes your inner voice, who you are, knows what you want, but you can't bring yourself to that. And so the universe, this is just my point of view, the universe kind of rearranges things so that you can have what you want. And what I wanted was a life as an artist. Somewhere, whoever, whatever force found that in me, it was manifested in me getting fired. Had I not been fired, I don't know what the hell I would have done. But because I got fired, there was no alternative. You know, when you're fired, they do not want you. When you don't get hired anywhere else, they do not want you. So you have to figure out, well, nobody wants me at this, I guess, even though I think I'm really good at it, you know. So it's like, it's a way that I went to the wall, and I, you know, I learned a lot about the university. I learned a lot about politics. I mean, it was a growth experience for me. But also, I don't know what I would have done if I would have just kept being at that. I would have probably been miserable. But it was, that's what I mean about the privilege of being fired. I don't know, it just came out of my mouth. It was kind of very poetic now. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Do you think if you didn't have all those external validations, the fellowships, those scholarships, would you still think you still feel the same way about being an artist? Any of you?
I don't have a Guggenheim Fellowship, just to be clear. Yeah, I think the putting in the hours. I mean, I don't know about 10,000 hours. I have no idea how many hours I put in, but just the process of making over an extended period of time has given me a confidence and in myself as an artist, and a confidence in who I am and what I have to say. Without, I mean, honestly, I mean, neither of my albums have gone as far out into the world as I would like them to have gone yet. You know, sure.
And I mean, I'm a performer, so I have really grandiose dreams, right? And if you meet a performer who tells you they don't have big dreams, you've met a liar, you know? So, I mean, in some ways, I haven't begun to achieve what I want to achieve. But I think the time coming back to my work over and over and over and over and over again has given me the trust in myself that I am an artist who is going to come back to my work over and over and over and over again. And I spend time being disappointed that my work hasn't gone where I want it to go yet. And that's hard, and it's painful, but it doesn't change what I know about myself as an artist now. So that, I mean, that's not Marion answering the question, but I mean, I can tell you for me, I haven't had the kind of external validation I want yet. And I would love to have it, but I still know what I know about myself as an artist.
I guess for me, that the external validation, even though what I'm saying is it still doesn't get in a certain kind of way. I still block it from when I know I'm an artist is when I'm working. That's when I really know. That's when I said, oh my God, look at this, I'm an artist. So that I have that validation because I got myself to a place where I felt I could apply. So, I had to believe when I applied that I could get it. If I talk to a lot of people that would say, how do you do this? Well, you've got to believe that you could get it. Otherwise, if you believe you can't get it, then God, who's the hell's going to give it to you? But I get myself to a place where I feel like I talk to myself, like now I'm thinking of applying for a Gottlieb grant, and you have to have done 20 years of work, and it can't be photography. So I have in a continuous conversation with myself about my work, looking at it, trying to find a way to connect with it in such a way that when I finally bring myself to apply for it, I will have convinced myself that they can give it to me. You know what I mean? So it's like a weird, I think it has a lot to do with each one of us as a person and what we need to keep going. The grants that I've gotten have all been for money. I mean, I needed the money. I needed the money to work. I mean, now I can't sell enough work to support myself, so I need the Gottlieb. So I'm pushing myself to work at it so that, see, I'm still saying in my brain, if I apply, instead of when I apply. And so I know I'm not ready yet. So that's, for me, when Judy Foff told me I was an artist, that was very big. I think sometimes there's little moments in your life when somebody that's important to you sees you. And all my life, that's been important to me, to be seen. I never felt seen in my life. And so part of being awards is being seen. So it might just be an emotional thing from my psyche. Maybe other people don't have that need to be seen, but it's very, you're an artist, you want to be seen, you're making work, you're writing songs, you're doing, you want to be seen. So in some way, being seen is part of how you get to define success. However you define success for yourself, it's not, I know someone who just, as an aside, who said to me, her mother made her believe as she was growing up that she would not be a painter, a real serious painter, until she had a solo show at the Museum of Modern Art. Now, can you imagine
No pressure.
what that does to you?
No pressure.
So,
When I chose to go back to painting again, I chose to be in it for the long haul, just in. But I'm also a deadline junkie, and I like deadlines. So I apply for grants, and I have gotten shows, and part of it is I keep my word. And I think this is very important for every artist is I keep my word. If someone says, get me those images, get me that press release, get me that bio, I get it to them. When I say, yes, I get it to them because I appreciate business, and if someone's going to take the time to spend time with me, it's important that I honor their request. The other thing is when I was working at the artist loft, people would come in and I'd go, are you an artist? And they go, no, not really. I'm like, well, you're in an art store, so there's a reason that you're here, all right? And so being an artist starts right here with you saying, I am. And in a different era in history, like the Renaissance, for example, we were all allowed, or people, if we had been in that time and era, everybody wrote sonnets, everybody painted, everybody did flower arranging.
Well, everybody in Provincetown is
And
an artist.
Played the lute, right?
Yeah.
So, and in Provincetown, which is a bubble, we have that privilege of living in a world where everyone's allowed to be an artist and nobody bats an eyelash. But if you're not in that kind of a safe environment, the person that can say, I am an artist is you. And I promise this to be true, that when you believe it, as Marion has been saying, the world will rearrange for you to have what you need.
And Cape Cod, it's a culture here of art, you know? I mean, you know, it's really nice. It's just, there's a million artists in Cape Cod, you know, so there is support for that kind of life. But it isn't for everybody. I mean, you can just dabble and enjoy it and use it like meditation and make your life fuller. You don't have to commit yourself to this as a profession, as a life. I mean, we're just three people that have committed ourselves to this as a life, but that doesn't mean, you know, everybody has to do it.
Well, are there other questions?
Yes.
Unless you have something.
No, go ahead.
So you said that you use it as a meditation. So let me flip that around. Is there anything that you all do when you're not doing your art that helps kind of divert your mind so that you can get back to your art? Like, do you go for a run, or do you read, or do you...
I make pies.
Is there something where you shut your brain off from that so that you can get back to, you know, creating the energy to be able to be creative? You know, something completely different, or maybe not. Maybe all you ever think about is your art.
I lay on the couch and watch shitty TV. Stinky cop shows like, you know,
SUV and stuff,
what?
like Law and Order.
Law and Order, you know. I do crossword puzzles. I like to walk. I walk. I have a hip surgery, so right now I'm not walking very much, but.
Well, I would say in the first 10 years that I was creating again, so like 29 to 39, I come from a very like conventional, rule-following, appearance-oriented family. So I had none of the information I have been sharing today, like none of it. And I really fed on reading books by creative people, reading interviews with creative people. We have a handout, and I gave Amy a list of some of the ones that I read, and it was literally like food. Like I could feel it, like giving me information about what I was trying to do that I literally didn't have. So I did a lot of that.
Me too. I read a lot about artists, and I watch a lot of documentaries about artists, like Art in the 21st Century on PBS is like a brilliant show into creative people.
Yes.
And anytime there's a documentary about an artist, I will watch it, and it will move me. I just saw one about Joan Mitchell, the painter, and it blew my mind. So, you know, writers, any kind of creative people, if you delve into their reality, you share a space that's, you know.
Yeah, and hearing about other artists' processes, and then sort of identifying and getting a mirror for what my process is. And then I'm a movie junkie, so I watch a lot of movies, and they kind of stimulate me and relax me at the same time. They're like the perfect drug for me, and I get a lot from all those mediums coming together, the written, the visual,
The music.
the acting, the music, all of it in the same place is very stimulating for me. And I read a lot. I mean, I like to ingest art. You know, I like to see visual art. I like to ingest art, and I do feel it like revitalize me as an artist.
I think also the last point, you know, it's not what Marion said about being a full-time artist isn't for everyone, but making art is for everyone. So when you leave here today, how does it fit for you? Because if you do want to do this full-time, you'll make financial sacrifices. There are things, it's not for everybody, nor should it be. But everyone deserves a creative life. Everyone deserves to do something with, you know, that makes you feel joy. So, you know, if you could leave or take away that today, you know, if I spend, and someone said this to me in the lobby, I spend 2 hours a week with a painting group and it makes my life. My life. 2 hours a week. So what could you do as an artist that would give you that? And even if you're like a professional filmmaker, but you secretly wish that you were doing like calligraphy, do it.
I have a friend that I met when she was beginning her graduate work in clay, and I was a 17-year-old freshman. And it's, I think, a rare thing that a graduate student and a freshman become friends, and that 47 years later, we have remained friends. And we had a discussion similar to that, and it was the fact that although I haven't worked in clay professionally for 30 years, the way I approach my work is in that same pattern as when I was a potter. In other words, I will make the piece until it has the next stage of creation, and then I have to let it dry, even though it might be a photograph or beads or anything else. Does that make sense to you when I'm saying the pattern of that? And I just found it very interesting that we would have this discussion about, you know, because I'm trying to figure out why I get to this one point and then I can't seem to make that transition. Do any of you, have any of you found
The transition from what to what?
Yeah.
the transition from a huge volume of work to being almost finished, to being finished? You know, an artist knows when. I had a professor, Earl Linderman, you know, back in the 70s, say an artist knows when. I've pondered since then why an artist doesn't know why they have to do it. You've talked about the drive that you need to do this. It's there, but how? You know, I can't seem to get past that. And it's interesting because I was an artist. I won a student art competition in 1975, a century ago. They do still have the work. I asked last spring when I was there, and it is at Arizona State University. And then, as you were talking about the differences in the last century, I was told I was an undergraduate clay woman. There had never been an undergraduate clay woman win the first Jurors Award. And my counselor told me I should be a kindergarten teacher. Now, there's nothing against kindergarten teachers, but I would have been a really rotten kindergarten teacher. But I ended up in my community and somehow getting into political science as an elected person. And now, you know, I have brought myself to Cape because of the magic of the arts. But it is it's an interesting making that final transition. I don't know how to.
But again, I'm not clear. So final transition, are you making work and you don't know when it's over, or are you not?
No, I make work that is almost finished. It is, you know, and it is done in stages. In other words, bead work that is almost finished.
So you never find the resolution you're satisfied with? Is
I
that
never.
what you're-
I'm just.
Are you asking, how do you know when something's done?
No, I'm asking, how do you have the courage to finish it and put it out in the world? Perhaps that's it.
Deadlines. Juries.
So when you go and you apply and they say, what is your work? and you know, what, I
Well,
was
let's just say, okay,
40 years
so,
away or 30 years away, now I'm coming
so at
back.
the museum, for example, okay?
You are letting the other system get so deep into your head. You're
why I'm here, by the
justifying.
way.
Okay, what you're doing is you're justifying, you're asking the question of the system who could give a flying you-know-what about you, right? And what makes you do what you do or who you really are. You're asking for permission to be your own person. Do you see what I'm saying? You have to define who you are, and that's between you and you. And all those other people, you know, I had a session with a therapist a while ago over a million other different things, but she said to me, do you really think everybody's thinking about you, Marion? That everybody anybody cares? Oh, how does Marion feel this morning? Nobody cares like that, right? This is you carrying around ideas in your head about what some nebulous, gigantic collection of whatevers believes about you. You know what I mean? You're trying to justify it. You're saying to, what I hear you saying is, who do you think you are? Who are you? Who do you think you are coming back after blah, blah years to do this thing again? Well, you're the same person that did that work those years ago, and right now in your life, you're picking her up. I'm the same person that had that dream when she was 4. And now, at 74, I'm allowing myself to be her and have her move through the world. And you are now allowing that person to have life. And that's who you are. You don't have to justify it. Does that make any sense?
Well, we'll see at the end of the day.
I mean,
If it's made sense and everything.
well, there was a time when you finished things. You know what I mean? It's all in your head that you're afraid to finish them.
By the way, I'm here because I accidentally sold $250 worth of photographs the other night to some people who came over to see.
That was
and-
no
No, it
accident.
wasn't. It wasn't, because immediately I signed up yesterday for this.
That was
Because I
no
wanted to do
accident.
this, but the budget.
That's
you know,
like me
so-
getting fired, okay?
Yes,
That
yes.
is you saying to yourself, hey.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something? Good.
There, I think that every,
Come on, we're pulling you down. We're pulling you down.
Yes, please.
by not finish, I'm not going to get into the not finishing, that's for you to decide, but there are hurdles of growth. Just like those amazing runners that I'll never be, that jump over the hurdles, right? And one of the first hurdles is a body of work.
Oh, I've got that.
Right, great. So then you're set with that. Then the next hurdle is sharing it in the way that you share it. But a lot of what I think Marion's trying to say is that your internal conversation's not serving you. And so I hope today at this conference that we can support you.
Thank you.
We believe
Well,
in
and I mean, I think, you know, it's interesting because Laura went to a very practical solution, which is if you're having a hard time finishing things, like go get a store to see if they're interested in your beadwork, and then you'd have to finish beadwork, or turn something into a jury, and then you'd have to finish it to turn it into the jury. So that's like a really practical way to kind of push yourself through whatever you're coming up against. I find for me, and partially I am a writer, like if I'm coming up against the same obstacle over and over again in my process, I walk away from that and I write about the obstacle. So I just free form write about like why this over and over again, what's happening, and I just free form, like let it all out. Like, am I afraid it's not going to be what I want it to be? Am I, whatever it is. And then I get information and it moves everything. I'm not just standing at the wall, banging my head against the wall. It kind of shifts the shape of the wall. and it shifts me in relation to the wall, and then suddenly there's a little curve, or there's a little secret door, or there's a little trap door, there's a, or there's a little ladder over, So that's something I would do if I found myself kind of like coming up against the same thing over and over and over again in a specific process.
You guys are so inspiring to me. Right back at you.
Yeah.
So we're
Out of time.
We're getting close to being out of time. So I guess what I would ask each of you to do is if you can sort of identify, and I think identity is the big theme of the day, is identifying yourself for yourself, like Marion was saying, but identify something that helps you maybe move forward, which we've been talking about. But if you could just sum it up so people might have something to stick in their head. So okay, that's an easy question.
I'll do this quickly. So I had the privilege of having my life fall apart in New York City, and because of that I did this fantasy thing, which was go to Provincetown for 4 months 11 years ago, which is just a great example of when you like take a leap into a fantasy, you never know what's going to happen. I had no plan to stay in the cave for 11 months. And I was giving myself this writing retreat. I was in this apartment and I literally put up quotes from artists all over the wall. Like I just taped them up so they were staring at me all the time. And I really support you in doing like quixotic, idiotic things to support your creativity. You know what I mean? Do the thing that everybody in your life would say, oh, that's stupid, or oh, that's too much, or oh, people don't do that, or won't that look silly? Do that thing, because it'll create so much space for you. But so I get a lot from other artists, but Willa Cather wrote a book called The Song of the Lark. It's not one of her most famous books, but it's a beautiful story about an extremely talented young girl growing up in a rural Colorado town. It's clearly largely autobiographical. And it traces her development as an artist. And she, at one point in the book, there's just this one sentence, and it says, an artist must be born twice, and the second time is longer and much more painful. So we're all being born all the time as artists, and I encourage you to embrace that process.
When
See if you can make feedback.
I work with a lot of older artists now, helping other people break through their block, so to speak, and saying, finally, at last, I'm here. And what I've noticed people do is try and throw out their history. Like, that never happened to me. I was never a therapist for 40 years. I was never a school teacher. But I want to tell you that is the juice of your art. So embrace your history. The second thing is that I've seen what people do is go, especially with the age thing, they ageism themselves, and they go, oh my God, I'm too old to become that. I can't become that. I can't do this. And when you embrace your circumstances exactly as they are, is the beginning of true growth as an artist. You just embrace exactly what you are doing today, what you've done up till today. Bring your past with you and allow it to help you. I mean, if you've been a therapist for 40 years, you know something, right? If you've been a school teacher or a librarian or a business person, you're bringing a lot to the party. And so that is my biggest suggestion.
I would say, when you look at other people who are doing what you want to do, don't use those people as means to put yourself down. Don't say, which I do a lot, I see all artists on TV and whatever, and they're like working every day, and I think, if I can only be like that, if I can only be, like, I'm still doing that, and it's so self-destructive. to look at other people and what they're doing and to judge yourself by them. The truth of the matter is, the closer we can get to our genuine self, the happier we will be. And I'm learning that about my life. It's taken me a long time to learn it, but I am learning it. And, you know, so hopefully I'll keep living a while longer and have a chance to even be happier and happier. But I think that that's the key, is to try to settle your own relationship to yourself. The truth of the matter is, only I know how to steer this ship. And it took me breast cancer and near death to find out that only I know how to steer this ship. And if I don't want to steer it, right? I mean, who else knows you but you? No one else knows you but you. So you have to find a way to take control of your own ship. And then you have a life. You have a life with yourself. I mean, I sound like one of these TV evangelists. But that's what that would be.
I wish they sounded like that.
Put your money, you haven't been But, you know, that's what I honestly believe is the path for everything, you know, and art is just the way that we express that. And I'm always amazed at how much I know when I want to start. You know, I make little figures and they're walking and whoa, look, they're walking through rocks. Well, there's a metaphor. You know what I mean? So just do your thing.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to the panel. Thank you for joining us. And we do have our handout. And also, this afternoon there's a workshop, and one of the presenters is here, Christine, that is kind of taking the next steps, moving your work forward. So that might be a nice complement to moving over your blocks or your breaks or whatever. But thank you all for coming, and have an excellent day.
Don't leave without getting one of